Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Supergirl. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, obviously, last episode kind of set up that we're going to do some time traveling this episode. We're going back to 2009 Midvale. It was actually kind of interesting, like, Alex had talked about, like, there being, like, a meteor, and, like, Kara, like, went up and, like, punched it away, but, like, there ended up being, like, some kryptonite on it, so she ended up getting really hurt. Maybe that's even kind of interesting, too, the interesting line of, like, oh, yeah, this is the first time she'd ever seen Kara bleed. Because I guess it's also, like, Kara's always just, like, Kara's never really gone up against anyone at that time that was, like, stronger than her or anything like that, so she was kind of one of a kind, so I think it kind of fits that narrative of, like, oh, yeah, like, there are these super beings, you know, on this planet that, like, nothing could really hurt up until, like, you know, kryptonite was discovered and everything. I just thought that was just kind of an interesting line. But obviously it's like, well, who's going to go? And it's like, Brady's like, me and Nia, because we're the only ones that don't have a chance of bumping into ourselves into 2009 and changing everything. I even love Alex being like, this is my password talking about, so don't go screwing things up, and don't mess it up or something. And, like, you know, Brady's kind of chuckling a little bit, but Alex is kind of giving him the serious look. It's like, right. I mean, to be fair, they haven't had to deal with it too much, but we, as the audience, have seen enough time shenanigans to see, like, oh yeah, like, the ramifications of shifting the space-time continuum and stuff like that, what kind of effect it's had. We've had that both with The Flash as well as Legends, you know, so... Which is obviously something that's now all, obviously, once again, all on the same Earth. It's still kind of, it's still got that feeling to me like, it's all on the same Earth now. Or at least most of it. But regardless. What I also thought was kind of interesting to bring up the fact is, like, because even John be like, wait, didn't Kenny die? It's like, oh yeah, but that's like one of those, like, crisis things where it's like, once again, crisis, the gift that keeps on giving. I thought it was so interesting because I remember parts of the Midvale episode. I keep forgetting when it took place. I want to say it was during season 3. It might have been during season 4. I don't remember, because it was after. I think one of the reasons why Alex and Kara went back there is because Alex and Maggie called off their engagement because Alex wanted kids and Maggie didn't. I believe that was season 4. It might have been season 3. I don't remember. Like, a lot of that's kind of blurring together. But, yeah, I didn't even remember Kenny dying until they brought it up. I was like, hey, at the very least, that's something positive that came about because of Crisis. Kenny's alive in this continuity. Because that's actually sad to think about, like, oh, yeah, he died. It's like, oh, that's super depressing. So it's like, hey, something positive. I mean, there are both positive and negatives post, you know, Crisis on Infinite Earths. But regardless, fact is, Brady's like, oh, she's saying, like, not to mess it up, and it's like, they're in these prom uniforms because they're supposed to be showing up, like, prom night is when things go down, they're wearing the glasses. They never actually said what those glasses did. Does that actually change? Maybe that's something that's come up before, but it's like, they didn't explain what the glasses actually did. At first I was wondering, are we going to show it, like, depicting them as, like, looking like regular teenagers? I'm assuming it does. They're like optical illusions. I'm sure very much probably like psychic paper from Doctor Who. I'm sure those probably might have come up before in Supergirl, but I just don't remember. Which, if that's the case, is that kind of what helps Kara hide her identity as Kara? Like, is that what, like, those glasses actually do that in this universe? And that's also another explanation of, like, why people can't... Once again, that's always a conversation about the glasses. I'm not going to go into it. I've actually did a video a long time ago talking about the glasses thing, like, actually why it works for Clark Kent, and I think the same thing kind of applies to Kara, though it's not, like, as staggering of a difference between Kara and Supergirl like there is, like, Superman and Clark. It's a whole thing. I won't get into it because it'll be a long-ass tangent, but it's actually an interesting thing. Like I said, I did a video kind of breaking it down a little bit, like a couple years ago, maybe a year or two ago. Regardless, I love that they landed Midvale, because it was a whole conversation, too, of like, yeah, are you worried about, you know, because you're stress eating again, are you worried because the last time you did some time traveling, you were off by 15,000 years? He's like, 12,000 years, but yes, it still bothers me. But it's like, because this mission's too important. This is their last, like, ditch effort to find DNA for Kara, so it's like, this mission is too important, so, but things don't go according to plan because they show up at least a day early, plus they land in the field, plus they need to, like, repair stuff on the ship. There's a whole conversation between Kara, Alex, and Kenny, because Kara and Kenny have been doing their Scooby-Doo gang thing of like helping around town to the point Midvale's been known as like the luckiest town in America. And Alex is supposed to be kind of away at college, but she's back right now. And so she's trying to get Kara to keep her low profile. But obviously they show up at the field and it's like, oh, Kara. It's like, whoa, you know my name? And it's like, crap. Yeah, we're aliens. We're from a planet. We're a planet of psychics. And, you know, we are fleeing, like, you know, a dying planet. And we were trying to meet up with the rest of our people. And, you know, at first I was kind of like, I was like, right. Technically, they're not lying because they're like, right, they are aliens. I forgot. I didn't think about that. I was like, why'd you choose an alien cover story? And then I was like, oh, wait, it actually fits because Kara is an alien, so that's a lot easier to explain. But also, it's like, right, you guys actually are aliens. Nia's half alien, and, you know, obviously Brady's a full alien. He's a Coluan, so it's like, it makes sense. I was like, I don't know why I was so stupid about that and, like, didn't think about that. But, nevertheless, it's kind of like, you know, they were doing their best to try and fit in, but it kind of didn't work out. So Nia is staying with Kara and Alex, and Brainy, or, you know, rather it's Brandon and Brenda are Brainy is staying with Kenny. But also they ended up displaying their powers as like, like Nia like helps open up the grass where like Kara had split it with her heat vision so that it can upheaval the ground so that it can bury the ship there and keep it hidden. So, and obviously them trying to devise plans on like how to attack this situation. Obviously to recreate what they need a 3D printer. So Kenny helps Brainy out with that, which I love. Brainy's still stress eating, as well as Kara and Nia you know, bonding, because it's a whole conversation of like, yeah, like Kara, you know, it's still kind of that thing of like, she doesn't really have anyone she can like, who can understand. It's like, yeah, they know what she's going through, but obviously like the only person that could understand is her cousin Clark. But even then, Clark was a baby when Krypton exploded. Kara has memories of it, so it's a little different under those circumstances. It's like, here's a world Clark only knows tangentially from like what he's kind of been told, you know, by like the messages left by Jor-El and stuff like that, the knowledge of Krypton and stuff like that. Kara, once again, was like a preteen/teen when Krypton was the choice, so she has distinct memories of it. So Nia's in a little bit more of a position where she, like Kara, could be like, yeah, you actually remember your planet was dying, so it's like, you know, plus you lost your mom, I lost mine, which, you know, it's sad because obviously Nia did lose her mom, but it's like Kara's got her mom present day. She's just on a different planet, you know, Argo and everything. So now she, you know, interestingly enough, has her dad and everything. I didn't know that Nia and her sister were still like not on the best of terms. I thought there was an episode where they fixed things, but I guess maybe they didn't. Maybe that just never happened. I think maybe it did, or that might not, unless that's a crisis thing where it's like on this Earth they never like fully fix things. Things are still awkward. Like there's still a little bit of resentment on that front, which it's actually kind of interesting when you actually like draw the parallels between Nia's sister and their relationship, as well as Kara and Alex's relationship, especially at this time. But like Nia and Kara about, you know, because also like this is another person that Kara gets to share, like, oh my god, like this is what I can do, I can float, and Nia gets to show off her powers a little bit too. But then Alex has to come in to be like, yo, like knock that off, like the moment you guys get what you need to get, you gotta go. And it's like, yeah, we appreciate it. And you know, Kara being like, yeah, Alex is kind of a bit of a control freak, but you'll get used to it. And Nia's like, yeah, I probably will. And it's like, yeah, once again, it's funny how things can change so much while at the same time change so little, because that's still just who Alex is at her core. But at the same time, we also have like Kat coming to town because she's investigating stuff, because she wants to like do something. She's calling up Perry being like, yo, I'm gonna write something that's gonna push like Lois like into like a different like section of the newspaper or whatever. Which I also love later on, there's a comment from Kara being like, no one reads the newspaper, which is, I think that's supposed to be the joke of like, right, because you end up becoming a journalist who fights kind of for like, you know, print in the newspaper and the power of the pen, essentially, you know. So it's like Kara saying that that line is ironic, especially considering your future boss is in town investigating the miraculous stuff that's going down in Midvale that made it such a lucky town, you know, so close yet so far away. Like, but her journalist instincts are kicking in. I also love that she was at the bar and she was like, and the dude's like, Lois Lane, and you're like, ooh, that stuck the knife. It's like the dude stuck the knife in and twisted it hard by doing that, because obviously, like, she always, like, kind of played second fiddle to, like, Lois in certain regards. So, like, that was, like, it's just kind of like that was a deep cut. That was a super deep cut, you know, so I thought that was kind of interesting. I also love, too, that, like, I mean, and I think this is kind of the point, like, Kat's like, oh, I'm here to find, like, this mysterious being, who it is. I'm going to name them and everything, which obviously it's like, oh, you're a couple years too early, because you are the one who does end up naming Kara as Supergirl. Like, you get to, you know, Supergirl kind of becomes, like, your prize, like, not prize thing, but more so like, hey, you're the one that kind of, like, did that. I mean, she's also the one that technically named Barry. I mean, granted, that, like, got completely undone because that was on Earth 38, but she's the one that named him the Blur, if I remember correctly. I don't think it was the Streak, because I think the Streak was what Iris originally named Barry. But the Blur, because I think I remember making a comment at the time, like, right, in Smallville, that's what Clark became known as. I think specifically, didn't Lois name him the Blur? If I remember correctly. I think I remember referencing that being a whole thing. But regardless, it's kind of interesting because she also got the name Barry. But once again, because of Crisis, that got undone. But still, I thought that was just kind of interesting. Like, because she ends up running into, like, Alex and is asking Alex about the stuff. But Alex is like, yep, there's absolutely nothing here. And then obviously, like, shenanigans ensue because, for one, there's a whole bunch, there's this, these Torque aliens who are there because they're trying to collect species for their zoo. And I'm like, maybe I'm mistaken, didn't, what's his face do something similar? God, I'm blanking on his name. Lobo was what I was thinking of. I could not remember Lobo's name for the life of me. But I'm also wondering if I'm confusing that, because I think, like, Clark technically has, like, a zoo of, like, rare species or something like that. Maybe I'm thinking of that, because I know Lobo's, like, a bounty hunter, but I don't remember if he did the whole zoo thing. Maybe, because I feel like I vaguely remember that being, like, an episode from, like, the 90s animated Superman series. I could be mistaken. Like, that's why I was like, yeah, it kind of reminded me of, like, Lobo. Like I said, I don't remember if that ends up being the case or not, whether I'm confusing, like, Lobo's circumstances for, like, Clark, who I think it was Clark that actually had the zoo and not Lobo, if I remember. I don't remember. But it kind of reminded me of that, and that's kind of what was in my mind. But basically, they want a Kryptonian. It's like, they had, in this continuity, the Torques, they've already run into Clark. It's like, yeah, like, that Kryptonian, that male Kryptonian was already kind of an issue, but it's like, hey, it's a sign that there's another Kryptonian on this planet, so that's our sign to kind of jump at this opportunity. So that's what they're actually doing. They create circumstances to runaway truck and stuff like that, because it's like, oh, that other Kryptonian lets us say today, maybe this one does too. So they're planning on trying to draw Kara out. Kara and Neil were able to stop the vehicle, but also, like, Brainy showing up deterred, like, the Torques away from them, which also, like, other shenanigans go down. I love the fact is that Brainy, you know, obviously stress eating and stuff like that, waiting for the 3D printer and everything. And then on top of that, it's like, oh yeah, like, you know, that choir teacher or whatever, like, heard his voice and it was like, oh, like, you're just perfectly what I need. Also, he eventually somehow shenanigans ensued and he got drafted by, like, the coach for the baseball team or whatever, and he's enjoying it and all that stuff. I mean, it's kind of unfair with, like, the way you can do calculations and stuff like that. It, like, kind of makes it super unfair for you to be at bat, and Kenny's the one stressing about it. I love it. It's like, you guys are the adults in this situation. At the very least, he's the adult in this situation, and it's like, right, like, should be extra careful about being, like under the radar, even more so than, I mean, because I guess Kenny's already, you know, kind of done that with Kara, and that's kind of a full-time thing already, but dealing with, like, because Brainy should already know even better, because it's like, right, I shouldn't be showing off, you know, I should be very below the radar, even more so because I'm a time traveler too, you know, so. But it's like, yeah, let me get in it, but also, like, it's like, rather than eating, he found another outlet for his dealing with stress, and, you know, high school aspects ended up kind of playing a role in it. I just thought that was so fascinating. But aside from all that, there is a lot of like deeper stuff that ends up coming up. Well, first and foremost, Kara's planning on going to National City for college, but her and Kenny are supposed to be like going to Midvale like college together, but she hasn't told him yet because this is her dream college, and she doesn't want to break it to Kenny yet. She doesn't know how to. And Alex kind of throws that in her face later because Alex kind of snaps at her because it's like, you're not being responsible. Because sadly, and you know, and I've talked about this before, like Alex, like, that's why Alex is so heartbroken about Kara present day, is because Kara's always been her responsibility. She used to kind of be upset by it, but now it's like, that responsibility and just their sisterhood, they've grown so much. So there's that, I think there's that part of Alex that's, for one, it's like, I'm the older sister, I'm supposed to protect you, but also it's like her upbringing, like that part of like looking after her sister it's a core aspect of herself that like hasn't gone away and still exists there subconsciously. So I think that's what kind of drives like Alex to be even more depressed, like considering like Kara's current circumstances. But even more back then, like Alex kind of resented Kara because of that. It's like, I have to make sacrifices. Dad sacrificed his life for you. Mom made sacrifices in her job for you. So it's like, Alex is kind of like, the reason why I didn't go to Europe and stuff, even though I wanted to, because Mom was so worried about you. So yet again, I had to make sacrifice. Like, you are up here like acting all willy-nilly about everything, and it's not fair because other people have to pay the price. Like, you're not just able to, you got to be more mature, more responsible, which obviously the irony behind all that, considering, once again, their current circumstances. But Kara, wanting to prove like, oh, I am more mature, wants to go to Kenny and like tell him the truth. But Kenny shows off like their like hideout because it's like, yeah, like because her cousin, I don't know if Kenny knows that they're cousins. He just says like, oh, she looks up to Superman, so he must not know. Like, I mean, I guess that's something like only like the Danvers and Kara knows. Like, I guess she still never even told Kenny that they're cousins. But the fact is that it's like, yeah, she looks up to Superman. He's got his own like hideout, Fortress of Solitude, so he wanted to kind of make one for them as well, and he does. And it's very sentimental because at the end, it's the stump where like, oh yeah, this is where we had our first kiss and everything. He was like, yeah, like because for him it's like Kara makes him feel like anything is possible. He can do anything, so he wants to continue doing this like helping people thing, which obviously is something Kara wants to do, and obviously will continue to do. But now it's a situation of like, oh, he's like, so you wanted to talk, and it's like, oh, this awkward thing of like, because that's also the thing too. Like, what is Kenny's life like present day? Like, maybe when we get back to the present, we'll kind of find out maybe more about it, considering like, oh, Kenny actually got to live and have a life, I'd assume, not unless we're going to end up finding out he's actually, I was about to say, not like it's going to be something crazy like, oh, he worked at the DEO or something like that. I was like, I don't think that's going to end up being the case. Which, I'm sitting here just being like, right, I kind of forgot about that element. Like, I was like, right, because that hasn't come up at all this season. That I was like, right, I completely forgot about the DEO present day, because I was like, doesn't Brainy still technically work for the DEO? Because we haven't touched that at all. Because it's like, Alex doesn't, because she kind of, everything that went down last season, obviously John doesn't either, but it's like, I think technically, Brainy still does, but we haven't touched on it at all. Like, I wonder is that an element? I mean, it didn't even click in my head until I start talking about it just now, because they referenced the DEO because they're looking through their files about the torques and everything, but I'm like, right, the Naxium torques, but it's like, it didn't click in my head to think about, like, right, we haven't dealt with the DEO, like, at all this season. I was like, right, I guess because they kind of been doing their own thing as, like, a pseudo Justice League, so it's like, I guess because of that, like maybe Brainy took a step back from the DEO last season. I just don't remember. That's probably the case. Once again, terrible memory on my part. So, which, speaking of them, things have shifted timeline wise, because they were supposed to get captured by the aliens that were trying to collect people for a zoo. They were supposed to get captured like 3 days from now. But because of their interference, things have shifted, and now it's a situation where it's like, oh, they're actually never ended up getting captured. So, part of me was wondering, are we going to run into John? Like, I feel like he's going to make some surprise appearance. He typically does when it comes to, like, I mean, because I'm assuming that this is kind of. I mean, obviously, he's still keeping an eye on Kara and Alex as a promise to Jeremiah to check in on his family and stuff like that. So he's not going to probably pop up as Hank. He's probably going to pop up as someone else. Part of me was wondering, like, when Kat was at the bar, the bartender, I was like, is that actually going to be John in disguise or something like that? And he's going to try and wipe her memory so she doesn't end up discovering Kara and stuff like that. That's what I was wondering. Still could end up being a possibility of, like, right, a lot of people's memories are going to need to be wiped about certain circumstances. Once again, could just be like oh yeah, now my memories are different. Like, they'll come back and be like, oh, and they'll be like, oh, wait, what? That's different? Wait, what did you guys do? It's like, oops, no, that's the way things always were. We didn't change anything when we were in the past. Nope. We'll see. Because I was actually surprised this episode ended up being a two-parter. I would have thought this was like a one-off thing, but it's like, no, it's a to-be-continued circumstances. I didn't realize that until like I was near the end of the episode. I was like, oh, there's literally only 2 minutes left in this episode. I guess this is a two-parter, interestingly enough. But obviously there's also the angle of Nia, the conversations about moms and everything, and obviously considering the time frame, her mom's still alive, and for her it's like, right, I need to, she wants to talk to her mom because, like, for her, it's like, I don't fully understand my powers. The one person that can give me answers, it's gone, and now, and for her, it's like, now because I don't have full access to my powers, don't fully understand them, I'm kind of like a detriment because it's like, I should have figured out about, who, what the pink animal was about, like interpreting her dreams. Like, and she's like, if I could have jumped on that sooner, understand fully what I'm capable of, she's had to kind of figure everything out on her own, so I'm sure, that plays, that plays a role, even to the point Brainy was like, whoa, like, Nia, she's like, I know, but it's like, I didn't even get to talk to my mom, I just heard her voicemail, but it's like, for her, it's like, I need, she needs someone in her corner. For one, she'd give anything just to hear her mom, to be with her mom one more time, anyway, even just aside from her powers are just a part of that conversation. It's just having that person back that you care about, which even, Brandon's like, I'm sorry, I was insensitive, I didn't think about, like, what being back in this time would mean, like, especially with your mom being alive now, But, obviously Brainy tried to use all his high school tactics that he's recently learned to deal with his stress, but it doesn't work. Nia, uses her stress reliever, that being her singing her favorite song. And it helps kind of calm Brainy down as well, but sadly at the end they're captured by, our, collectors of sorts. So, a lot of interesting things. Curious to see ultimately where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode, what more time shenanigans we'll get into, and like obviously how they'll find themselves out of this circumstance, but also like where things currently, like the Kenny thing, like what's that going to turn into, like now that we know in this continuity he's alive, like what did his life turn into for the past like decade or so, like what did it involve, what Kat's story is going to be as she continues investigating things here in town, especially because she was like, oh, that's not a smudge on my camera, that's a spaceship. Oh, like asking that kid, like, hey, give you $20, kid, and it's like, oh, gonna use that kid's drones and probably investigate stuff. So she's probably going to get like pictures of Nia, Kara, probably. So once again, somebody's memory is going to have to get wiped, and I think that's where John's going to come into play, maybe. So we'll have to wait and see where everything ends up taking us next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.